非常精彩的国际智慧校园展览，因此接下来2天的时间都有非常丰富可期的展会内容，要邀请大家一同共襄盛举。这一次的大会呢，非常荣幸哦，邀请到国内产官学研各界的精英，还有各界的朋友，甚至如果您眼睛有仔细观察到的话，其实呢，已经有非常多现场的贵宾是远从世界各地而来的专家学者，就是要跟台湾所有的朋友，还有产学界研的精英们一起共襄盛举，来分享全球创新教育、智能学习，还有智慧学习的新趋势，也要带入各国的创新方案。因此呢，今天大会的一开始呢，就要来介绍整个大会的贵宾。那么接下来呢，贵宾您的名字如果被念到了，也麻烦您站起来向大家挥挥手，让大家认识您。So first, we would like to introduce our honorable guest today. And if your name is called upon, please stand up a little bit and wave your hands so all of us can get to know you a little bit better. 好，首先呢，我要介绍来自Minerva School 的亚洲区总裁 Mr. Kenn Ross。也要介绍远从意大利来台的 Arduino 的执行长 Mr. Federico Musto。紧接着欢迎 Google for Education 亚太区的代表 Mr. Suan Yeo。另外呢，还有其他亚洲来自各个不同国家跟各个不同城市的代表，我们欢迎香港浸信会天虹小学朱子颖校长，欢迎新加坡公益教育局科技发展中心郑传安经理，欢迎曼谷都会管理局教育顾问 Mr. Kenn。接下来呢，要欢迎经济部工业局杨志清组长，欢迎经济部工业局谢荣峰副组长，欢迎资策会数位教育研究所蔡义昌副所长。接下来我们再欢迎这个资策会数位教育研究所李进宝所长。好，接下来呢，我们还有许多位来自产业界的贵宾哦。首先第一位，我们欢迎宏基黄少华董事长，也掌声欢迎来自于澳门电讯黄永简总监。好，我们欢迎在 Intel 呢也有来自几个贵宾的产业界的代表，欢迎 Intel Solution Architect Mr. Vitashi。另外呢，也来自于这个 Lenoncom CEO Tiraka。好，来自于 A to Z Technology 呢，也有2位贵宾，是 Mr. Effendi， 同样也是 A to Z Technology Mr. Fred 郭。另外呢，还有来自于约旦的黄丽玲伊莎。好，这些呢来自于产官学界不同的主办单位，还有不同的研究机构、不同的这个企业的代表，接下来也会在这2天的大会呢，跟着所有的共襄盛举的嘉宾们一起来探讨接下来未来数位学习、数位产业，还有智慧校园的未来趋势。数位学习呢，现在已经成为生活当中不可或缺，那么影响台湾产业非常深远的一个重要的议题，也期盼呢，在大会上面所有的美好的愿景都能够一一实现。因此，接下来的时间呢，要让我们邀请主办单位经济部工业局杨志清组长来为我们致辞，有请杨志清组长。 Now let's please welcome Mr. Zhi Qingyang, who is the Director of Industrial Development Bureau, Ministry of Economic Affairs.
各位现场的嘉宾、各位贵宾，大家早安，大家好。很高兴代表经济部工业局来到现场跟大家致意。我现在刚刚同仁给我的资讯说，我们今天的卡司呢相当的坚强，包括有我们这个来自这个 Minerva School 的 Kenn Ross， 还有呢我们 Google for Education 亚太区总裁Suan Yeo， 还有呢这个Arduino 的执行长就是 Musto， 他来到这边那大家呢可能不是冲着我来的，是冲着我们在场的卡司来的在这里呢欢迎大家的到来，
欢迎。谢谢。
那今天呢我们这个国际学习跨域创新论坛呢会有一系列的相当的活动，除了刚刚所介绍的卡司之外呢，我们也会跟各位报告台湾在数位学习、在智慧校园的一些成果。那先各位报告说这个台湾在智慧校园的一些情形。目前呢，我们从这个资策会不管是蔡宜昌副所长以及呢李进宝所长的一个努力之下，我们过去3年来已经在国际上建立了大概有41所的一个国际上的这个智慧校园的示范学校。那这些示范学校呢，也带领了大概有1万多名的这个学生、老师跟家长呢，做了一些体验。我想这些成果就是很好的一个 demo site， 也让台湾的能量能继续展现。那在未来呢，我们也会应用台湾的 ICT 的技术，持续的让智慧学习、智慧校园的这些成果，在国际上各个国家、各个地区展现我们的服务能量。那也跟各位报告我们目前在国际上的一些成果。我们目前在越南在泰国也在印尼呢都有不错的一些时机，也感谢各位现场嘉宾来到现场给我们肯定。那我们今天的卡司呢刚刚有报告过有3位那先从 Arduino 开始。 Arduino 它会从这个物联网的教育的一个创客的一个趋势跟我们待会会做分享，我想让各位的嘉宾呢会有很不错的一个丰富的体验。那再来是呢，这个 Google 亚太区的执行长也会跟我们做一些分享，不管是从这个资源有限的情况之下，如何让智慧校园里面的这些资源更有效的应用，让这些资讯人员的能力能够有更有效率的提升，让不管是学生、家长以及呢这个老师都能够有更好的一个服务的效率跟更好的学习成果。那也跟各位报告一个消息，就是在我们会场的外面呢就在您如果从这个大门出去往右边直走，我们有一个展区，这个展区有智慧校园一日生活圈，也希望大家在今天的论坛之后的空档到现场去看一看这些厂商所实际的展现的能量。那仅在此呢谢谢大家呢在百忙之中的到来，也希望我们今天呢经由这么多卡司的分享，大家的收获呢都能够满满。敬祝大家身体健康，事事如意，谢谢。
非常感谢杨组长的致辞。那我们要请组长请留步在舞台上，因为接下来呢，我们就要一同为2016国际智慧校园与学习跨域创新论坛暨展览来揭开序幕要邀请各位的贵宾再次来到舞台上。Now let's invite all our honorable guests come onto the stage again. Let's begin our opening ceremony. 首先呢，让我们再欢迎一次来自于 Minerva School 亚洲区总裁 Mr. Kenn Ross come onto the stage, please. 欢迎 Arduino 执行长 Mr. Federico Musto. 欢迎 Google for Education 亚太区的代表 Mr. Suan Yeo. 欢迎香港浸信会千虹小学朱子颖校长。也欢迎新加坡公益教育局科技发展中心郑传安经理，欢迎曼谷都会管理局教育顾问 Mr. Konkiti， 也欢迎澳门电信商业服务发展部黄永简总监， 以及欢迎主办单位资策会数位教育研究所李进宝所长。感谢所有的嘉宾一同到舞台前来。感谢所有的讲者、所有的嘉宾，为我们一起留下最珍贵的画面。有请台下的媒体朋友也帮我们一起捕捉这个珍贵的镜头。Let's say cheese。好，活泼一点的话，有请台上的讲者也一起比个赞，让我们可以留下充满精神而且象征正式开幕的仪式以及画面。好，我们一同看舞台的正中间。Oh, it's very local. Yay, Jester! 好，在这里呢，正式宣布2016年国际智慧校园与学习跨域创新论坛暨展览正式开始。希望接下来这个展览能够替产业带来无限的商机，也预祝展出成功。谢谢台上所有的讲者跟贵宾。好，相信所有现在很多人参加了报名，然后也非常期待我们精心安排的第一场的专题演讲。专题演讲命名为高等教育的未来，非常荣幸呢是邀请到颠覆传统高等教育的 Minerva School 亚洲区总裁 Mr. Kenn Ross 要上来跟我们一起分享高等教育的未来。就让我们用最热烈的掌声来欢迎 Mr. Kenn Ross come onto the stage and share with us what do you see about our future education, of higher education, and how to bring more impact to the society.
Okay. 各位来宾早上好，我是来自 Minerva School 的 Kenn Ross。首先要感谢经济部工业局还有数位教育研究所的邀请安排，我今天很荣幸到这边来和大家分享。那么中国有一句古话叫做天不怕地不怕，只怕外国人讲中国话。结果呢，所以我今天要切换一下，用英文讲了哈，请敬请谅解了。So I'd like to talk about this topic today, this subject today. How best to prepare our best and brightest for not only the future, but even today, because we are already into the 21st century. And in doing so, I'd like to share with you an idea, a model. It's not just an idea, it's actually now a university institution, right, that has been founded and created by some of the leaders of our traditional top universities in the United States. So former presidents of Harvard, deans of Harvard, the dean of Stanford, deans from the Wharton School, the University of Pennsylvania. People who understand higher education at a deep level, particularly in the United States. They know what's good about it, they know what's bad about it, and they have some ideas about how we can create something better. So, preparing students for the 21st century, right? We all know that talent knows no bounds, right? There are extraordinarily gifted and talented students from all around the world. However, we also know, some of us by personal experience, most of us have been to university here, right, that even the world's best universities, and as an American I can say, as a graduate of Harvard University, I can say even our best universities there are failing to prepare students adequately for future success, failing to prepare students for an ever-changing and uncertain world, an uncertain future. Here's some numbers that I always find a little bit scary to look at. So, almost all of university presidents and deans and provosts, the leaders of our great universities around the world, are fully confident, almost all of them, say that their universities, their institutions, effectively prepare young people for the workforce, for life. 96% of them. However, when you ask employers, public sector, private sector, government, right, you ask them, are these institutions' graduates well prepared for the workforce? They overwhelmingly say no. there is a huge gap right here. Some of us have maybe experienced this personally, right? When maybe we've also ourselves graduated from some of the world's top universities without the skills and abilities to be successful in the workplace, right? Let me share with you also some information about what does success mean for today's undergraduates, today's university students, or maybe even today's high school students. Right? It shouldn't be surprising that most university students are looking to go to university. One of the main reasons is because they're looking for entrance to a successful career path, right? They're looking for a good job. Makes sense. But here's the thing. Most university students, and certainly most secondary and primary school students, will end up in jobs, in industries, in companies that do not exist today. So how do we prepare for that? How do you prepare for that? How do they prepare for that? A bit scary maybe for some people. I think that many of you have seen this actually in the most recent edition of Weilai Family, the magazine in Taiwan. I know there was an interview with somebody who I think he was an advisor to American President Obama, and also listed out these skills. It should come as no surprise to those of us as working adults, right, that these, according at least to the World Economic Forum and the World Bank, are the key job skills necessary in our modern era. They're necessary now. They say the top job skills needed in 2020. Well, we need them today because you and I use these daily on a daily basis, hopefully effectively, to do what we do, regardless of whether we run a government bureau, regardless of whether we run a private company, whether we're in research, whether we're in the arts, whether we're in academia, doesn't matter. But we also know that the world's great universities don't actually teach these things. Okay, here's another question. What about those students out there that are looking for something more than just a job, right? University certainly is designed, hopefully, to help us improve our career, but what else is there? To put it another way, how can we better educate the next generation of global innovators, people who will be impactful global citizens who will run the major institutions of the world, not just of one country, of the world in the future? And I would say, we would say, in order to change the world and have these young people change the world, you need to change the way they think. It's not just about content knowledge, it's about changing the way you think. Okay, so let's talk about a new approach. We all know what university is in its current form, right? How many people here have been to university? Well, it's a valid question. My parents didn't go to university. Right? Valid question. So many people have. Right? We know what it is. Do you think it could be better than what it is? Right? See a lot of nods. Right? So what about just a new approach? What about just starting from scratch? And I'm not talking about taking our traditional great universities and improving them here and tweaking them here and making them a bit better. I'm talking about starting with a fresh blank sheet of paper, reimagining the university, a new approach for a new era. And I'm going to share with you what some of us believe this new approach should look like at a general level, right? This experience or this institution should provide global experience for students, right? And that just doesn't mean going from maybe your home country to another country and staying there for 4 years. It means a truly global experience in multiple locations, right? There should be a focus on the learning and the application of practical knowledge. So those 10 skills that I mentioned before, that the World Economic Forum says are critical for whatever job or career you have or whatever you do in life. People should learn and apply these across multiple disciplines. Third, we believe that you can redesign the classroom to employ active learning rather than passive learning, because we know the data shows that active learning is much more effective, right, than this. Right? This is very passive. You guys are listening to me lecture. Right? Not a good thing, actually. It's a little bit of a big room. It'd be tough to do something quite active here, right? But ideally we would. Right? And then we're talking about an institution that is uniquely internationally accessible. So some people ask at this point, okay, Ken, you're from the United States and you're talking about a U.S. college, right? U.S. university. Minerva is a U.S. university. But as you will see, it is not a university just for American students. And as a result, it is very, very relevant for also everybody in this room. Okay, so global experience. Think about how we can redesign university to allow students to immerse themselves in various global cultures, right? Simply put, instead of spending your 4 years at university in one place, you spend it in 7 places, right? San Francisco, Berlin, Germany, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Seoul, Korea, Bangalore, India, London, and one other place that we have yet to announce. We will soon, right? And eventually, Minerva will have, I don't know, maybe a dozen or 2 different cities where students will spend their time, right? But here's the thing. This is not your stereotypical traditional study abroad. It's not a bunch of people from China going to the US and then spending time with all the Chinese people there. It's not a bunch of Americans going to Italy and just hanging out with a bunch of Americans in Italy, which is what happens, right? It's about immersing in these cities. And as a result, Minerva does not have a traditional campus. We do not build, in any of these places, or even in our home base of San Francisco, we do not build a traditional campus. We don't have the pretty buildings, we don't have the dining halls, we don't even have the laboratories. Why not? Because these resources and facilities exist in abundance in these locations. Why would I spend billions and billions of US dollars, right, to build an amazing laboratory facility in London or Seoul or even Bangalore when they already exist there? Why don't I, as an institution, make those long-term relationships with those best-in-class resources in these locations such that my students can use them when they travel there together? It gets students out into community, right? It forces them to engage with communities. They develop an understanding and appreciation for other cultures, other people. They use best-in-class resources. It saves a lot of cost because we don't build our own. And as you can see, it's why we can actually provide this education for a much lower cost, as I'll talk about in a minute. So it's a very different take on, it's not just traveling around, but it's also immersing in these locations, right? In addition to traveling around the world, as I mentioned before, this is an institution that educates people from around the world. So most of our top institutions in the United States and a few in the UK, on average, only about 10% of students at an Ivy League school in the United States are not from the United States, are not American. And maybe this is normal if you go to Taida, National Taiwan University, most of the students are Taiwanese students. If you go to a school in France, Sorbonne or something, most students are from the local country. That's the traditional model for university that we all know. Well, at Minerva, we've said, forget about that. Yes, we're a US-style university. We have an accredited US diploma. But we are here for the brightest and most motivated students from all around the world. And if you do that, if you remove quotas, 就废除所有的名额余额限制 sorry, sometimes I go back and forth, right? For students, if you do that, you get a very, very different makeup of students. And the vast majority of our students, 75 to 80%, are not American. Yet we're an American university. I always ask, and people say, that's strange. And I say, what would MIT look like if it did not discriminate against non-Americans? It would be 40% Asian students, right? You and I all know that. And so that's a little bit more of what we have here. Okay, so in addition to global experience, let's talk about learning practical knowledge, right? And again, let's go back to those competencies, or some of those competencies we saw in that World Economic Forum list, right? Think of these four meta competencies, these big level competencies: critical thinking, creative thinking, effective communication, and effective interaction, right? Think of these, because regardless of whether you look at the World Economic Forum list or you look at somebody else's list, everyone has their own list, right? These meta skills come up again and again and again. And you and I all know this, that this is what we use. These are things we use on a daily basis to succeed in whatever we do, right? But here's the thing. All of our great traditional universities, at least in the United States, say they teach students these things. Actually, they don't, right? And I know that very, very personally from being in one of those institutions, right? They disseminate content, right? That's the traditional model. And one of the reasons is you don't just, it's somewhat a little bit difficult to teach these things because something like creative thinking, critical thinking, it's not just one thing, right? Even just critical thinking is comprised of many different call them cognitive processes, right? And so what Minerva has actually done, right, because there are a lot of cognitive scientists who have come together to build Minerva. A lot of the people behind Minerva are experts at the science of learning, are experts in cognitive science. And they said, listen, let's break down these meta capacities. Let's break down these big skill sets, these 4 big skill sets, into component parts. So imagine students learning 120 different habits of mind and foundational concepts, right? The core fundamental building blocks, cognitive building blocks of those meta skills, right? Things like checking for claims, identifying audiences and tailoring messages, right? Or if it's things like foundational concepts, running cost-benefit analysis, doing BATNAs, stuff like that. 120 of these things. And you look at the list of these and you'd be like, oh, this makes sense. Some of these maybe you didn't think of in a structured way. But they are things that can and should be learned and taught in a structured way, right? And not only in one discipline, but across multiple disciplines, right? And then we believe when a better university, which is what we're trying to build, not only do you learn and are students taught skills and apply them across multiple disciplines and deeply for 4 years, but when it comes to content, when it comes to majors and concentrations and things like this, the content needs to be reorganized, right? Think about it. Your university, my university, has a biology major, and it has a history major, and it has an economics major. And our schools have had these for a long time. In fact, we should think a little bit about what's wrong if this structure has existed for so darn long, right? Even though the world has moved on, right? And the curricula at a lot of our great schools, at least in the US, remains very much the same. I had an uncle that went to Harvard about 45 years before I did. We took some of the same classes. We had some of the same professors. Not much had changed. But the difference between the 1960s and the 1990s or the 2000s is very, very great, as we know. Right? So universities need to rethink this, and that's exactly what we've done. Right? And the result that you get in terms of a curriculum is a very highly structured and highly scaffolded curriculum, one that builds on itself, right? In a way that I've actually never seen before. Okay. So we talked about global experience. We talked a little bit about touched upon just a little bit about learning of practical skills. Let's talk about how we can reinvent the classroom, right? So think of all the hours you've spent in class as students or maybe as teachers, right? Do you think we could make a more effective classroom? If you're a teacher, or particularly think of when we were students, do you think we can make classrooms more effective? You think, or classrooms perfect? Traditional classrooms perfect? I see some people saying, oh, not perfect. Okay. So what about doing that? What about rethinking what a classroom should be like? And we actually have a name for our classroom. It's called the Active Learning Forum, because it is all about active learning, not passive information dissemination, right? So it's about using scientifically proven pedagogical tools, stuff that we didn't even invent, because you know what? This stuff, you don't have to invent most of this stuff. People have been doing so, and people have been showing that certain methodologies work for decades. Right? And then it's about thinking about, okay, nowadays, what technology, finally getting to a little bit of technology here, what technology can we selectively use to further augment those scientifically proven tools? The tools work very well even when there's no technology component at all. Many of them were invented decades ago or shown to be effective decades ago before there was a lot of technology that was relevant for the classroom. But nowadays, you can actually use technology to further those or even optimize those learning outcomes. And it creates an intensely intimate and engaging classroom. It also helps that at least at Minerva, all of our classes, 100% of our classes are small seminars, 14 to 18 people, never more than 18 to 19 people ever. Have you ever heard of a university that has 100% all small seminar classes that employ 100% fully active learning? Maybe you have, I haven't. If you do, let me know. Let me show you a little bit about what the Minerva classroom looks like, what the active learning forum looks like.
The active learning forum is the unexpected learning forum, the place where you're constantly engaging with what you're learning.
As a Minerva student, I get to take classes from anywhere in the city.
All of Minerva's classes are taught in the seminar format with a maximum of 18 students.
Everyone agrees that higher education could be much better than it is today. Minerva is acting on that by putting together state-of-the-art technology and superb pedagogy. We have at our fingertips tools that are designed to engage the students 100% of the time.
When you characterize a problem, it's important that it helps guide you to the solution.
Perfect. That's excellent.
In a normal classroom, there's people behind you, there's people to the side of you, but it's nice to be able to see everybody and their reactions to what's being talked about in class.
I feel like I'm in a room with all of my students. I simply forget I'm on the computer. You will be going into breakout groups?
It's the kind of learning where we're an active participant instead of passive recipient, and it's so much more fun than a traditional class.
We are the only school in the world that uses the science of learning to design not just what we teach, but how we teach it.
Minerva students live and study together. Having that human interaction really strengthens the online class experience.
We can do things with education that have simply never been possible before. And that's what we're trying to do at Minerva.
We can do things that have just not been possible before, that combination of the best of pedagogical science, technology. It's about active, not passive. You notice that, 不好意思，今天用的那个简体字，我繁体字的版本就没找出来。有2个版本，我在大陆演讲很多。I'm like, oh, the 简体字版本, right? So, it's also about applying the skills that you actually learn in real life situations, right? So here's something else that this particular model for higher education, the Minerva actually does, is we're very big on experiential learning, right? So we say, because students are living together in these major global cities, right, there are tons of opportunities for experiential learning, location-based assignments, projects, right? With institutions, and I mean organizations, I should say, not necessarily other schools. Normally it's government institutions, companies or such like that, that actually, where our students can actually, with whom our students can actually engage with while they're there, and either apply what they learn or see what they've been learning, see how others actually apply it, right? Minerva does something that I haven't seen elsewhere, in that we offer what we call co-curricular activities. So these aren't classes, it's not strictly homework per se, but it's not just extracurricular fun stuff. Hopefully it's enjoyable, right? But these are activities that get students out into the communities, right? Further leverage the resources and facilities of these great cities, right? And augment those learnings from the classroom. Very, very important, right? One other thing that this institution does, and we believe any great university should do, is it takes a very, very serious approach to career path trajectory and accelerating career paths, right? Now, first of all, when you look at and you realize what our students learn, they're learning transferable skills, these practical skills. Right? They learn these things, that's one. 2, they're learning them in a global context and developing that global experience and that resilience that happens when you're moving from place to place and you're experiencing, engaging with other peoples and other cultures. But we say that's actually not enough for career support. Minerva has said this. Minerva actually has within our institution something we call the Professional Development Agency. And this is a group of my colleagues that focus on not only personalized coaching and preparation for people's internships, graduate programs, or jobs when they're in school, but also very aggressively works to place them in those internships and jobs. I have never seen anything like this before either, right? I always like to say for one of my graduate programs, I went to Harvard Business School, which is probably one of the top business schools, at least in the United States, they say. And even though this was one of the best business schools, traditionally speaking, and even though it's a business school, which means it's focusing on helping people get jobs, right? They have nothing compared to what Minerva has actually set up. Not surprisingly, the vast majority of our students, and keep in mind, we don't have graduates yet. We're still relatively new. We have 2 classes of students. We won't have our first graduates until 2019. But yet the several hundred students that we do have been doing internships, mainly during the summertime. And the feedback from their supervisors, where they've worked, where they've done research, is, well, it's what we expected and hoped, but it's pretty amazing. These people say they cannot believe that these are university students, because these people think and apply cognitive tools like somebody who's been to a top university for 4 years, a graduate who's worked for several years. And we say, yeah, that's what happens when you take this structured, purposeful approach to the learning and application of these habits of mind. And as you can see, even just the past year or two, many of the internships, short-term positions that our students have, it's pretty amazing. I couldn't have done anything quite like they're doing, be it this research that they do at Caltech or at the Santa Fe Institute, or stuff that they've been doing for Amazon or Uber. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Okay, so the question is then, right? I pose this question: if we think of ourselves as students, particularly, or maybe parents. I'm a parent, maybe you're parents. I think when you look at Minerva and you look at this very different model that we have, it's a very purposefully different model. You say, okay, who is this maybe suitable for? Who's ready for the challenge? Because I will not kid you, we have put together a very rigorous and intense experience, and we've done so on purpose. Right? But remember in the beginning I said it's a uniquely accessible one. So imagine if you selected students for this university, not in the traditional way, and certainly not in the traditional way that US universities select students, which is very not transparent, very opaque, right? Designed to filter out people that they want. They have enough people from Taiwan, enough people from Thailand, enough people from India. They don't want too many of those people. Right? But Minerva says, we just want the brightest students from around the world. So merit-based admissions, or how we assess people just purely on merit, right? So as you can see, we're trying to create something that's of a better quality than anything that exists, and then offer it for a lower cost, right? The process itself is very, very different than traditional schools processes. And again, I don't think any of us here are maybe going to be reapplying for university anytime soon, right? So I won't dwell on this. But keep in mind, it's designed to be a much more fair and equitable process for people from around the world, right? The other thing I mentioned is, we said, listen, if we're going to build a better university, particularly if it's a US-based university, you have to do something about the crazy cost of higher education in the US. 我经常说，美国人都是觉得我们的大学就是实在是太贵，被气得狗急跳墙，right? 简直是 right? Because it's ridiculous. $50,000 just for tuition. 更不用说什么生活费 is 有点离谱的。我作为美国人，我也觉得离谱。So Minerva says, listen, we can do a lot better by focusing on just providing an amazing education, but not running things like professional sports teams, right? No tenure for professors. So instead of $45,000 or $50,000, Minerva's tuition is $12,500. Even when you consider living costs, most of which don't go to us, it's still less than half of what you spend at traditional top schools in the US. And then, certainly for all students that actually qualify, regardless of where you are around the world, we provide financial aid. This is very, very different. You know, there are only, in addition to Minerva, there are only 5 universities in the United States that will give financial aid equally to, you know, non-American students. They'll give it to students from Taiwan, students from Japan, students from India, the same as they would for Americans, right? Only 5 schools. But those other 5 schools severely limit the number of international students they have. Right? Whereas Minerva has mainly non-American students, right? So things get a little bit different, right? Most of our students, as a matter of fact, as I said, actually have this financial aid, right? It's a little bit about some of our admissions data. The thing I was going to mention here only is that even though Minerva is uniquely accessible, it's also very selective. I believe I've run out of time. I don't know if we have any time for questions or have I eaten up all my question time, but if we do, I'd certainly be happy to hear your questions, thoughts, ideas, suggestions. Thank you.
谢谢 Mr. Federico， 谢谢 Mr. Kenn Ross 为我们带来如此精彩的演说。接下来我们将邀请国际创客教育始祖 Arduino 公司的执行长 Federico Musto 为我们带来云端物联网科技创客教育趋势的专题演讲。让我们用热烈的掌声欢迎 Mr. Federico Musto. Now let's welcome Mr. Federico Musto, CEO at Arduino.
Oops. Anyway,
Niao. That's it. So it's funny that I'm traveling in Taiwan since probably 25 years, but my Chinese is still very, very low. But I'm trying to improve with some interesting idea that I would like to share with you. So I just prepared a couple of slides today that I'm trying to use to explain a little bit about Arduino. Arduino as an open source project, Arduino as a community, Arduino as a company. Then a couple of questions that we have regarding IoT. I think that was the focus of my speech today. And then what we have done in the past 6 months to try to help the community and the school to play a little bit on the IoT world. So first of all, what is Arduino? Okay, I'm sure a lot of you know Arduino as an open source project. Arduino is an open source and open hardware project. That means that not only the software but also the hardware is available online in the way that you can fix, you can improve what you've done. The story of Arduino starts from a school and the Interaction and Design Institute of Ivrea, that is a small town in Italy. The idea comes from a student, from a South American student, Hernando Barragan, that developed an open source project that he called the wiring. And from this board, a professor and student at the school start to build this project that they call the Arduino. The reason why they call Arduino because it was the name of the pub that they was using to spend time by time talking about the technology. Arduino now has a lot of product. We have developer board, we have EVB, we have a starter kit, But probably a lot of you remember Arduinos like Arduino Uno, that is still the best-selling product, and it's very simple product. This basically is a microcontroller board with a software that allow to learn the basic of electronics. Arduino as a company, we're still a very small company, below 100 people. We have office mainly in Europe and Switzerland, in US, and in Asia we have Taiwan, that is our headquarters, and then we have Hong Kong, Shanghai, and that's it for now. So these are our people. So the people that work in our company, there is some people from Italy, and this is our team here in Taiwan, where we're mainly designer team and an R&D team. So let me talk a little bit about IoT. I mean, they asked to spend some time talking about IoT. What is IoT for us? So let's start with some few concepts that we have today. I mean, we know that not only here, but all around the world, the internet is available in a very easy way. The cost of the connection is going down. We have a lot of devices that are connected with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, sub-giga, let's say radio frequency stuff. And part of this technology has a sensor built in. Our phones, devices that we can use at home to monitoring the system. And of course, the smartphones are available in a quantity that we have a more smartphone than bread. So basically everyone has a 3-4 smartphone. So I would say this is the perfect scenario for the perfect store for the IoT. So that is a slide that probably everybody knows. I mean, very quickly we'll have a lot of connection, a lot of devices that will talk each other. Talking about a little bit the technology behind all of this product, this is the couple of very interesting language that there is on the IoT space, C, C++, Python, Java, JavaScript, Go. I like the logo of Go, the new language from Google, and so on. Of course, this is just a part of the language that are available for the IoT. Talking about the technology that there is behind IoT, it's something that we use as engineer every day. So infrastructure, we can talk about 6LoWPAN, IPv4, IPv6. We have a system to identify the devices, transport layer, discovery, data protocol. So all these ingredients are already available, and all engineers that work in IT space, they know this technology pretty well. We believe that maybe there is too much complexity, and we believe that one of the key points to have something that everybody can use is to reduce the complexity. Have something that really everybody can touch, everybody can use. So let me try to find another way to explain what I'm trying to explain. I mean, assuming that we have today a goal, and the goal is, okay, we want to communicate. So we want to find the best way to talk each other. Well, probably the first question will say, okay, how many people speak Chinese? And we will see that the majority of the people in this room speak Chinese. Well, funny story, it's not only the people in this room, but the people all around the world. You guys speak a beautiful language. Unfortunately, I'm the guy that doesn't speak this language, but this is number one. The second language is Spanish, and I can speak Spanish. So the good news, if you want, I can switch in Spanish right away. But we use English. I'm sure there is a good reason why we're using English, but as you can see, the reason why we choose English is not because it's the first language, because that is, for whatever reason, is the language that a lot of people are using to talk each other, to communicate each other. Let me try to ask you another question, that why Arduino is so popular as a microcontroller board? So what is the reason why we're so famous? And this is a community that a lot of people are using Arduino to learn electronics. Well, there is several reasons we believe. Of course, the one that we believe is the most important one, that is very easy to use. The entry level is very low. So if you guys start to use an Arduino and the first project is to have an LED on the board blinking, well, you probably need 3-4 minutes, and then you'll be able to have the LED blinking. Something we call Hello World from Arduino point of view. Is the programming language and the infrastructure, something we call IDE, is also very easy to use. And probably the most important part, that Arduino at the beginning has been used from art and designer guys. So we was using something completely new. We was using the art and the beauty of the paint and music to play with electronics. So we was able to combine a different world in the very traditional electronics way. That's probably one of the reasons why Arduino has become so popular. So in just one sentence that I'm sure you guys remember where it came from, we can say sometimes imagination is even more important than knowledge. And we believe that if all together we can do something that we like to do, we love to do, well, the results will be amazing, will be incredible. Let me show you just a couple of slides that what we have done in the past 6 months, and I'm really proud to say that 90% of those technology come from here, from Taipei. Okay, this is a slide of all the new products. So that's the product that we are using right now to implement IoT in a lot of different solutions. So we have a I told you that I don't speak Chinese, right? And that my way to try to start to learn Chinese is to call all the new product with a Chinese name. So we call Arduino Tian, and I'm sorry guys, my pronunciation is still really bad, but I'm trying to understand a little bit more. We call Arduino Yun, and so on. So all the new product will have a Chinese name, so that will help me to learn a little bit about Chinese. It's a joke, of course, but. So this is the product that we built with a Linux inside. We have the Yun. That was really the first project that Arduino built with the Linux and the Wi-Fi and the microcontroller. So we have a microcontroller built in. In this case, is the same microcontroller that we have on the Leonardo. Is the IT Mega 32U4 with the Linux part and the Wi-Fi technology built on the same board. Then we built a similar board, but a different form factor, Arduino Yun Mini. Then we start to build the industrial application, a little module that we can use with exactly the same technology, exactly the same tool that you are using every day to write code for Arduino. Recently, we just announced the Arduino Tian. That is a product that has the Wi-Fi to 4 and 5 gigahertz, Bluetooth, and the Cortex M0 Plus as a microcontroller. That allow us basically to have 2 computers in the same board. We have a microcontroller that can control the Linux part, and as you can see, there's a very technical details. We are able to shut down the power of the Wi-Fi, so the power consumption will be very, very low, and we can use this board with a solar panel in any kind of application where the low power consumption is a key issue. Uno Wi-Fi is a very famous, Uno product is a very famous product. So we built the Uno Wi-Fi. That is basically the same Uno, but with a Wi-Fi connectivity. And we built this just for the IoT. So we believe that that will allow us to use the same very, very easy instruction to connect all our projects to the Wi-Fi, to the cloud. And we have a couple of projects that we're working right now to allow this product to be connected with the most famous cloud technology, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, and so on. We'll say 2 years ago, we started to think about, it would be nice to have a very, very little board that allow us to connect with all the radio frequencies that are existing right now. So we started in Taipei to build this product that is Arduino Primo, that means Arduino First. That basically is the first product that is able to combine Wi-Fi technology, Bluetooth technology, NFC technology, and infrared technology. So this product has been announced 6 months ago, and it will be the first product that is able to combine all the sub-giga, except the sub-giga, all the radio frequencies that are available right now. I will talk a little bit about that. It's an interesting part that this product is also based on a very, very low power consumption chip from Nordic. and allow us to receive a power just from a solar panel. So the goal is to have a solar panel that has this technology built in, so I don't need the power, I just need a light. And evolution, of course, that is to have a very, very small module, very inexpensive, that allow us to have this technology built in our project. And we call it Arduino Primo Core. But that is not enough. I mean, we believe that IoT should be something that we can use in a different way. So we believe that the way that we write code, like keyboard, or the way that with the keyboard or with the computer is a very old way. So we believe that the new way should be something that we can just talk, like we are talking right now. So thanks to ST, we built the first project that we call Arduino 8. And the first time that, well, we're not using a Chinese name, but we're using a number that means we're very lucky in China. So that is why we choose 8. I mean, I heard that 8 is a very lucky number, and that's the reason why we choose 8. The interesting part of this product that this is the first board that has a microphone. These microphones are directly connected with the microcontroller. And we have all the API that allows this board to talk with the Google service, Amazon service. So we'll be able just to talk, and then the board will be able to execute the command. Interesting part of this board that has also video capability, touchscreen, and camera. So it's basically a small environment that we can use to learn how we can use the voice to interact with the technology that we have. This from the hardware. And from the software point of view, what we have done in the past 6 months is basically to build an ecosystem that we can use to keep the complexity of the communication between the microcontroller and the Linux part as low as we can. We call this library Chow, that we learned that Chow means also bridge. So that's a funny story about how the different sound means different meanings. They have different meaning. So this is a very easy sketch that we can use to make interconnection between the very complexity technology and library that we have on internet with a kind of connector that will be able to talk with our microcontroller in a very easy way. We built a specific operating system that we call Linino that has some IoT support built in. And we built also a small operating system that we call Linino.io that is up and running on the microcontroller and basically expose all the functionality of the microcontroller directly on the Linux part. Of course, all those projects are open source and are available online. Last software that we built is Snap for Arduino. That is a new way to interact and to write code. It's basically something that we can use with a smartphone. We just announced it a couple of months ago. It's still under development, but the goal would be to have just a smartphone and tablet able to talk with the Arduino technology. And again, when I'm talking about Arduino technology, I'm talking about something that is available for everyone. So all the schematics, all the Gerber are available online, and everybody can use to take inspiration or to improve what you have done so far. Last 2 words is on the Arduino Foundation. That is really one of the activity that we're pushing now to collect expertise and to improve the technology that we have right now. Is a foundation, so it's a non-profit organization. We're trying to help basically student or engineer that want to learn the technology and the electronics. We want to help the teachers in the school that want to use Arduino as a technology to teach electronics. And of course, we want to help the community that are helping to have more features and more technology on the Arduino world. We just announced, unfortunately, this expired the end of the month. Thanks to this foundation, we was able to send our first Arduino Primo board in developer edition for free. It was a very small context. We was able to reach over 800 users in basically a couple of days. And that is thanks to the foundation activity around the world. So that's it. I mean, this was my very, very quick presentation today regarding what we have done in the past 6 months and our goal for the next month. Again, I insist to say that the majority of the technology that you can see here today come from our R&D center here in Taipei. So I'm very, very proud and happy to be here again today. Thanks a lot.
谢谢 Mr. Federico Musto 为我们带来如此精彩的演说。接下来我们稍作休息10分钟，在会议室外我们备有茶点，欢迎大家各位尽情享用。谢谢大家。
要插着，好的，我先关起来。
各位来宾，活动即将在5分钟后开始，请大家可以陆续就座，谢谢。 各位来宾，我们的会议即将在1分钟后开始，请各位尽速就座，谢谢。然后我再说，我先谢谢他们帮我，然后请各位好，我们的活动即将开始，请大家就定位。各位来宾，欢迎回到国际学习跨域创新论坛。紧接着，我们邀请全球智慧化教育的推手 Google for Education 亚太区总裁Suan Yeo为我们带来智慧教育的发展趋势，讲述未来 Google 在教育市场的发展推动方向。就让我们以热烈的掌声欢迎 Mr. Suan Yeo. Let's welcome Mr. Suan Yeo, Google for Education, Education Evangelist in the Asia Pacific region.
Good morning. 大家听得到吗? Good morning. My name is Suan. I look after education efforts for Google. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I don't know whether I came further than Federico and Kenn, but sounds like Australia is quite far from here. So maybe I might have just pipped them to travel the furthest to get here. I'm going to take the next 30 minutes to talk to you guys about the future of education. I don't have all the answers, but at least a glimpse into the possibilities, based on, what Kenn and Federico talked about earlier. So I'm staying at the Le Meridian, which is not too far away, 5 minutes walk. And in the lobby, on the second floor, actually in the lobby area, there's sort of a mini exhibition. And the title of the exhibition is, mini one was the memory of the elementary school. And on there you have, these things, right? These chairs and tables, your very traditional classroom, right? Remember, it's called the memory of the elementary school, right? This is what primary school or elementary school used to look like. And then I went to Google, and I went to Google classroom, right? I went to look at what are pictures of classroom look like, and you look at all these results, they're pretty much all the same, right? Maybe one with the exception here, right, which is organized differently, but most of them are organized with rows and rows of tables and chairs, right? Just like this one, not too dissimilar. So which got me thinking about why do we still operate in the past? Earlier you heard Kenn talk about the future of higher education, and I always think of, when we think of the goal of education, what is the goal of education? Is it to get a paper degree, right? Is it to prepare our kids for their future? And if you look at the second one, right, preparing our kids for the future, then how do we prepare them for that future? I like to focus on these three areas, and I'll give a couple of examples on why I think these are the three areas I'm going to talk about today. Empowering Generation Z. So let's start with this. Right, Generation Z is the generation of students that are in most of our schools today. Right, and what are some of the typical characteristics of Generation Z? So I want to start off with a video, actually, before I get into that. I want to start off with a video, that Google made, but looking at why questions are more important than answers. So let me show this video, and then I'll give you we'll talk about some of the characteristics of Generation Z.
Imagine the awesomest thing you can, like an automatic grilled cheese maker, or a time machine, or a time machine with an automatic grilled cheese maker. Now imagine who's going to invent it. Him? Glasses here? Whoever they are? Or maybe her? But how do kids like these become the types of people that do things like this? Maybe we should ask this guy.
Knowledge is heavy. Sometimes it's a limit to have new ideas. That's the problem with the old schooling, because they were teaching answers. I believe questions are probably more important today than the answers.
Erno's cube is a question waiting to be answered. And when the right person finds the right question, something amazing happens. They start seeing the world as it truly is. Not a place to be memorized, but a place to be figured out, flipped, turned, twisted, and ultimately made better forever. Today, she may be an octopus, but help kids like her fall in love with problem solving, and they will embark on journeys to become scientists, artists, engineers, designers, inventors, or something no one's ever been before, but you can bet we're going to need. That's why moments like this, go, and this, and this, and especially this, are so important. Because there are companies to found, planets to walk on, time machines to invent, a future to be made amazing. We may not know what it's going to look like, but we know who's going to do it.
So questions are more important than answers, right? This is the Generation Z, or Z if you're American. This is the generation that's in our schools. Now, what are some of the characteristics of Generation Z? Right, the average attention span of a Generation Z student is less than the time it took me to finish that sentence. 8 seconds. 8 seconds, right? So if you have a lot of kids now, in class that are constantly distracted, constantly thinking about other things. By the time they're focused on one thing, they're already moved on to another idea in their mind. They spend about 10 hours a day on the internet on average, right? That represents about 60% of the time they're awake. So more often than not, they are on their devices, they're connected, and they're looking for information, right? Or they're connecting with other people. This digital native generation, right? We call them the digital natives because they're born in this generation where they just expect technology to work. Think about this. In the past, you used to go onto the internet to look for something, right? You may go on Google or Yahoo or whatever search engine. You're going online to look for information. And now that's changed. Now you also go online, the generations that they go online to manage relationships, right? They're on social media, they're connecting with other users, there are multiple platforms, and they're spending a lot of time on those platforms. So we look at this as sort of a future of billions connected, right? More and more of the world are getting connected, but it's still a big challenge. There's about 7 billion people on Earth today, but only about 2 billion people have access to the internet. So when you think about access to information and access to technology, the large majority of the world still have little or no access to the internet. So why do we care? Why we're all, in this room, we're all involved in education, right? We're all educators. We're all in some role play our part in education. And education has that ability to make that all-inclusive future for all of us, right? For the future generation, where everyone can take part. I like to call this concept the CS plus X. So computer science, CS, or computational science, when you add that to any discipline, any industry, it gives you a whole different approach to doing things. I'll give you a couple of examples here, right? When you look at, CS, computer science plus physics, computer science plus biology, computer science plus retail, computer science plus music, fitness, all of these new disrupted technologies on the right there didn't exist, 5-10 years ago. Right? We call this, computational thinking is important because it introduces a different way of analyzing problems, of interpreting algorithms. And this is the stuff that's really important, I think, in my opinion, in education, right? Preparing them for their future. The sharing economy, which is one of my favorite things to always talk about, this is, you can probably come out in the last 5 years or so. I read a very good Medium article, that's the link at the bottom if you want to read it, called Access versus Ownership. How important is it for you to own something versus being able to access it? Right? How important is it for you to own something versus being able to access it? So I'll give you, again, more examples. I love examples here. Anybody know what these things are? CDs, right? Compact discs. And if you remember, back in the day, I used to buy CDs just for one song that you wanna get on that CD. Companies like Spotify, right? 30 million songs now for, I think, $9.99 a month or $19.99 a month, right? 30 million songs that you can get access to on one device. All the devices you have in your pockets, you can now access 30 million songs. How many CDs is that? A lot of CDs. VHS, going even further back. I went to a primary school and I showed these two things, and some of the kids had no idea what these things were. It's amazing. But the videotape, video cassette. YouTube. Right, YouTube is now the main video platform that you have online. Again, another new Web 2.0 technology that's disrupted a traditional industry. YouTube is amazing. You think of, Google acquired YouTube in 2006, and now, about 10 years later, every 60 seconds that passes by, 400 hours of video are being uploaded to YouTube. Let me say that again, because we've got to understand the scale of this. Every minute that we sit here, there's 400 hours of video being uploaded to YouTube. It's a lot of content, right? So even if we spend the rest of our lives just watching YouTube, we won't be able to catch up with everything that's on YouTube. Books. When Amazon came out with the Kindle, a couple of years ago, you can now, again, from a single device access, 10 million books, and again, for a monthly membership. Right, so the examples go on and on, right? How important is it for you to own something versus being able to just access it? Right, with your devices today, you can access any of this stuff. You don't need to buy this anymore. And then you think of some of the other more traditional, even older industries, right? TV, and you got Netflix, Uber, with the automobile industry, right? Accommodation provider and Airbnb. So a lot of these traditional industries on the left are being disrupted by new companies on the right. I love, I've been using Uber for 2 years. Big fan of Uber. I know Uber's here in Taiwan as well. And it's amazing, right? They average, I think, more than 1 million rides a day now, globally. So which makes them the world's largest taxi company, right? Or car ride share company. The world's largest taxi company, and they own no vehicles. Right? Most of these are, their drivers are driving their own cars, or they're leasing, most of them are driving their own cars that will be sitting in the car park and not used, it weren't being used. Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, and they own no real estate. They don't own any property, right? They're all individual users who are renting out their apartments, renting out their houses. Facebook. or YouTube to a certain extent. Facebook, world's largest media content provider, and they own, they don't own any of the content. All of the content is user generated. Where all of the content on Facebook is uploaded by the users. What they had for lunch, what their dog's doing, everything, where they're going, everything that's on Facebook is created by the users. Facebook doesn't actually, create any of that content. And of course, Alibaba, world's largest retailer, and they own no inventory. So the list goes on and on. I could go on for days about many of these companies. How they disrupted very traditional industry, with computer science, computational thinking, with technology. So this idea that Generation Z, right, the students in your school, in your universities, they'll pay a premium for access because it's convenient, right? From, again, one device, anywhere, I can access any of my music, my books, my videos, my photos. I don't have to go, I don't have to go and buy it. I don't have to own it. Let's talk about the future. So how do we prepare them for that future, that we know is coming? So, I have a different version of what Kenn showed earlier. The Economist Group, they ran a survey of the Fortune 500 CEOs, very similar, critical skills that what CEOs are looking for when hiring job applicants. And it's amazing when you look at the top three there, I guess, problem solving, teamwork, communications, critical thinking, right? These are all skills that employers are hiring for, they're looking for. So when it comes to education, how do we plan for this? How do we accommodate matching the skills that they need for the future? This idea that we're always in search mode, right? We're constantly looking for something, we're constantly searching for more information. And it's true, right? You go on the internet today, you can find anything that you want, and you're always looking for something. What does this mean, right? Why does technology make such a big difference? Because you're getting to see applications like these, right? Photomat, if you haven't seen this app, this app, again, you have a problem, you put the app, your smartphone over it, and it gives you the answer. Brilliant, right? You don't even have to do math anymore. But technologies like these are becoming more and more commonplace. Right, there's always an app for that. You hear the phrase, there's an app for everything now. We've got applications now that can see, hear, and understand, you based on where you are. Right, it can, for example, if you have a camera, you take a picture, it can tell you there's a glacier. It can do real-time translation into different languages. Right, so more and more of the technology and the applications that we see are going in that direction, where it gives you information even before you ask for it. So are you ready for this? When we think about some of the technologies that are coming, and at Google, we've got a few that we've started to invest in heavily, which I'll talk about in a second. Skybox, is a satellite company that Google acquired a couple of years ago. And what this does is we're launching our own satellites into space. And, the technology will allow us to see real-time video on our phone. So, you want to see something that's happening in another part of the world in real time. We're gonna be able to see that pretty soon. Right, we're getting there. Boston Dynamics is a robotics company, so they make human-like robots that can, go into, places that are not convenient, for humans to go to, like war zones, extreme climates, going to space, and so forth. And then DeepMind. DeepMind is a artificial intelligence company that, again, we acquired. I want to show this video. If you go to the deepmind.com, their website, their mission on their website actually says to solve intelligence. To solve intelligence. Pretty cool, right? Pretty crazy at the same time. You think about, what the challenges are with solving intelligence around neuroscience and artificial intelligence. Anybody play the game Go? Anybody play this game? Go. If you do or you've tried playing it, you know it's a very complex game, right? It's not a very easy game. It's not like chess. People say chess is easy until you play Go. And what DeepMind, the company they started to do was can we teach a computer to play Go? And they developed a program called AlphaGo to challenge human players in Go. Right? In the past, you see, I think IBM came up with the Deep Blue, right, to take on the Kasparov in chess. And this game, being more complex, the company decided to challenge human players in Go. So let me just play this video.
Games are kind of microcosm of the outside world. That's why games were invented. That's why humans find it fun to play. There's a rich history of computers tackling board games. It started with games like backgammon, drafts, and then finally there was Deep Blue in 97 that beat Kasparov in chess, which was obviously a huge watershed moment for game AI. Since then, the really big remaining sort of holy grail, if you like, has been Go. In chess, the number of possible moves is about 20 for the average position. In Go, it's about 200. Another way of viewing the complexity of Go is that the number of possible configurations of the board is more than the number of atoms in the universe. If you ask a great Go player why they played a particular move, sometimes they'll just tell you it felt right. So the one way you can think of it is that Go is a much more intuitive game, whereas chess is a much more logic-based game. AlphaGo is our program to actually try and crack Go. We played the European champion Fan Wei in a 5-game match. We have an estimate of how strong a program is. Of course, you never know. When you play a human player, they do all sorts of very interesting creative things that your programs don't necessarily do. So there's always an unknown.
When we play the first game, I lose.
I think he was a bit stunned after the first game, and I think he was unsure as to whether he hadn't prepared enough or whether the program was really strong.
I think after first game, maybe he don't like fight. He like play slowly, so it's why begin the second game, I fight. Do mistakes sometimes. Excuse me. I think maybe I'm right. It's why for another game I fight all the time. Now it's a good game. But I lose all my game.
AlphaGo won 5-0, which is the first time ever a program has beaten a professional player. The way I see where we are now is that we've beaten the European champion now, and the next step for us is to try and challenge the legendary player Lee Sedol, who you can think of as the Roger Federer of Go. We always used to talk about, well, if we could eventually crack Go and have a program that could beat the world champion, then we must have invented some generic, general-purpose algorithm. So maybe we're on the cusp of all of that, and we're very excited about it, but it is just a rung on the ladder towards solving artificial intelligence.
Pretty amazing, right? So in April of this year, actually, this video was made at the end of last year. In April of this year, they did take on Lee Sedol, the world champion in Go, and AlphaGo won 4-1. So now the machine, the computer, has defeated the world champion in this game. So this is the kind of technology that's coming. So what does that mean for today, right? What does it mean for all of us when we go back, into your classroom, into your schools, into your classrooms? How do you bring that back into the world that we live in today? We see, technology everywhere, right? Sort of learning takes place anywhere, anytime, on any device now. You walk into, you walk out and you see in public, people are constantly on their devices. This is me last night. I was walking around my hotel, 9:30 p.m. This is near ATT for Fun. I don't know if people know that area, that walkway. I was like, why are there so many people at 9:30 p.m. at night? Most of the shops are closed already. Anybody want to guess what do you think they're doing? Catching Pokemon, right? It's ridiculous. And I was like, I went to look on everyone's screen, and everyone's like swiping right to catch the Pokemon. It's amazing. It's amazing, with technology, you see people getting out, they're being active. I saw this joke online. that a lot of people like myself who are very frustrated with people that play Pokemon all the time. If you wanna chase wild little creatures all day, try parenting. So those of you who have your own kids, Pokemon Go is like catching your own kids all the time. This is my daughter. This is my daughter when she was 4, so about a year ago. So that's Emma. Emma, the story here is you can see the things at the bottom there. It was Mother's Day in Australia, and she wanted to make her mom, my wife, a Mother's Day present. And as a 4-year-old, she didn't know what mom would want, right? So she went around the house and she found some of the things that she thinks mom would like, right? So obviously you can see there's an existing DVD that we already own. There's a flower that's in the house, a picture of herself. She made a card, right, Mama? So she made a card, and then she, and a hairband, a hair clip, or whatever. And so she asked me, say, Daddy, how do I wrap this, right? How do I make this into a present? How do I wrap this into a present? And I was like, I don't know how to wrap. When you go to department shopping malls, they always wrap the presents for you, and you buy them sometimes. And they have this way of making the nice bags, where you can just put the things inside, so they can make the wrapping bag. So I'm like, why don't we make a wrapping bag? And then she asked me, do you know how to do it? And I said, I don't. So what do you think Emma did? Anybody want to guess? What do you think? How do you think Emma solved this problem? She went to YouTube, right? So she went to YouTube and she put, how to make a wrapping present bag. I mean, I typed it out for her because she didn't know how to type. But she put that in, and then she watched a video, 3 minutes, and then she made it. Right? So that whole process took about 10 minutes, right? 3 minutes to watch the video, 5 minutes to negotiate the tape and the paper, and then she wrapped it, right? And she made a bag. And that's the generation that's coming into the world today, right? This idea that I see, every moment being a teachable moment. That was a teachable moment for Emma, where I could show her, with real life things, how to use technology to help bridge that gap. New Media Consortium is an education think tank that we work with, and they publish what are some of the big education trends that are coming. And they have a new K-12 version, so kindergarten 12 version for 2016 that they're about to put out, I think, in the coming weeks. But anyway, the early preview, if you want to get a link of this, was they look at what are some of the things that are coming in the industry that are popular, right? In that 1 year or less time frame, you have things like shifting from consumers to creators, rise of code, and I'll go through this in detail in my following slides. And then they looked at 2 to 3 years, and they looked at 4 to 5 years, right? So what are some of the key education technology trends that are coming in the next 1 to 5 years? So let's start with the first, right? This idea of shifting from consumers to creators. Very often, a lot of technology today is just about consumption, right? I'm looking at my iPad, I'm reading, I'm watching. It's very one way, right? As a student, I'm just, it's just absorbing. I'm just consuming the information. I'm not actually creating anything. I'm not making anything. And more of what we're seeing in education is heading towards the creation and the making, right? Creating content, right? Encouraging creativity. How do we use technology to encourage creativity? Right? What are some of the challenges that we have where it doesn't become one way and becomes two way? I'm building apps. I'm using Arduino. I'm using YouTube. I'm uploading a video to YouTube, and then people are giving me information. But how do I create more content and I can share that with the rest of the world? The second area around rise of coding as a literacy. Right, you heard Federico talk about Arduino and the platform there. It's the same, right? We work with, you see products like Scratch, like Blockly, right? Block-based programming, teaching kids how to do this at a young age. Why is this stuff important? And it's not about creating the next generation of computer scientists, but it's really giving them different problem sets to analyze and to interpret. We're seeing more and more, increased collaboration, more and more of the world, right? Earlier we talked about what are the key critical skills that are going to be needed in education. Collaborations is definitely one of them. In any workplace, right? Whether it's in a commercial or even as teachers, I'm sure many of you don't work alone. Nobody works alone in the corporate, in the workplace. You're always working with someone else. But yet, as students, sometimes we always encourage them to study alone, or to take exams alone. Why is that? We test them, individually. So more and more of the world is heading towards that collaborative nature. We're going to see new models of learning, right? You hear a lot of these phrases that are thrown around in education technology, problem-based learning, flipped classroom, blended learning, right? These are all things that you hear are coming into classrooms, modern classrooms around the world today. And so, we see things like that, right? Learning in virtual reality. Right, VR is probably one of the hottest topics. If you look at the agenda, for this conference, you see there's a lot of gaming, there's a lot of virtual reality. You walk into the exhibition halls, the same thing, right? This is going to change the way that people think about augmented reality and virtual reality and how it can infuse and come into the classroom. I want to show this video. This is Google Expedition. So we launched a VR product called Expeditions, and it's a free web-based app that you can download. But really to look at how can kids use technology to bring them to places that they can't go to. So how do we create virtual field trips? Right, instead of bringing your class for a field trip outside, how do we bring the field trip into the classroom? So I want to show this video talking about Google Expeditions.
You could pick anywhere in the world that you want to go. Where would you want to go?
I would like to go to the moon, Thailand, ancient Greece, India, to Nigeria, my homeland. One or maybe all of the 7 wonders of the world. When you explore different places, you have the chance to actually learn something new.
You want to be able to show the kids that there's something outside of your community that you could go to and learn from, and that there's other places you can visit.
All right, so let's do our objective and we'll talk about the lesson for today.
We're going to take a field trip to Verona, Italy to see the place where Romeo and Juliet lived.
I'm going to take you on this field trip under the water. Okay, you guys ready? Pick up your devices
and look in your cardboard.
What is that?
I see a shark.
Whoa!
It allowed us to go somewhere we wouldn't normally be able to go.
Are we in China?
This is the Great Wall of China.
We got to see the place itself, so we could actually understand what she was talking about.
How long would it take to walk the length of the Great Wall of China? So much more enriching than just showing them a picture or just having them read about it.
This device can actually make us go to places that we've never been before.
It brings the lesson to you. You have to see it for yourself to believe it.
There's so much other places to see, so you know that it's never going to end.
So how do we use technology like that, right? That and bring that into the classroom. In that 3 to 4 year time frame, in the NMC report, it talks about redesigning learning spaces. Right, earlier I started off my presentation today talking about traditional classrooms and how they're organized. Everyone's facing the front, listening to the teacher as the focal point of the classroom. Look at this picture here. What a radical idea, right? Getting students to face one another. How crazy is that? But it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, think of most of the time, if you're focused on collaboration, you're focused on problem solving, getting kids to work with one another. Why can't we get them to face one another? And this is just one example. The different ways that you can organize this. Right? More and more classrooms are being retrofitted, to allow for interactive learning, for group-based, project-based learning. I think this is really important because we got to move away from the teacher being the focal point of the class of the lesson and allowing students to be that focal point. What will learning look like if this was the classroom? So, the rise of maker spaces, right? A lot of schools now are moving to a world where they have dedicated areas allowing kids to, use coding, programming, Arduino, 3D printing, using their hands, right? What would learning look like if this was a classroom instead of tables and chairs? How would they learn? How would they solve problems? How would they, work together? And then last but not least, rethinking how schools work. This is a picture from an article I put from the, not too long ago, I think the Finland Ministry of Education, they sort of announced that they're doing away with traditional subjects. Right? They're moving away from teaching math and history and science and geography. Right? Instead of teaching every class by subject, they're moving to teaching by topic. So for example, today we're going to talk about World War II. Right? And in that topic of World War II, we can talk about the history of World War II. We can talk about the geography of where it happened. We can talk about, the numbers and, so the different disciplines that you can teach within each topic. Right? And the teachers have to be equipped to be able to teach across all the different subject areas. And students, become more complete and more holistic when they look at some of these topics. Anybody know who this guy is? Jack Ma. Jack Ma, fantastic story. Those of you who followed Jack's career or read about his story of how he's come on, he was interviewed at the World Economic Forum in Davos, I think it was last year. And the reporter was asking him, what's the secret to your success? What's the secret of Alibaba's success? And Jack, went on and he said, oh, actually the biggest secret was failure. He talked about failure, which is not very common, right? Multi-billionaire CEO, talking about failure. So he talked about, when he was young, he applied to get a job at KFC. There were 14 people that applied and only 13 people got in. And he was the only one that didn't get the job at KFC. Jack Ma, right? He talked about, he applied to get into Harvard 3 times. 3 times. Right? Twice as an undergraduate student, once as a graduate, MBA, I'm assuming. 3 times he applied, 3 times he got rejected. And I think during the forum when he was interviewed, there was a Harvard professor sitting in the front row that said, we'll take you now. But he never gave up, right? He never gave up. He kept going. And obviously, we saw, Alibaba, went public. He kept on with his dream. And, his success was really about his persistence. So this idea of failing, right? Really, as he talks about, is that first attempt in learning. Even though he's failed so many times, he continued to push on and learn throughout that process. One of my favorite TED Talks is by this lady, Professor Angela Duckworth from University of Pennsylvania, and she talks about, it was cut off here, the key to success. She talks about what is the key to success, and she went to interview a lot of Ivy League university top graduates. She went to West Point, which is the military academy in the US, and interviewed their top graduates. She interviewed spelling bee champions. So a lot of top students she went to interview, trying to understand what is their key to their success. And it wasn't about how high their GPA was. It wasn't about what background they came from, how much money they had. Right? The key success, she boiled down to this thing called grit. Right? Grit, which is that persistence, right? To keep trying, keep going, right? Never giving up. Great video to watch. Again, if you want to look at this. If you ever have the opportunity to visit Facebook, Facebook is one of the obviously tech powerhouses now. Around Facebook they'll have this poster pasted around the office. Right? Nothing at Facebook is someone else's problem. If you find a problem, don't tell me the problem. go solve the problem. Right? So how do you build this culture of problem solving at your school? Right? If a student comes up to you asking a question, how do you flip it around such that they are empowered to solve the problem and find out the answer? 5 more slides and then I'll wrap up. At Google, we have a team called Google X that looks at, how do we solve big problems? So Google X, I'll show some of the projects that we've done. But the intersection of these 3 areas, right? What is the huge problem that we want to solve? I'm talking about real world problems that we want to solve with technology. What is the breakthrough technology we want to introduce? So we don't want to just use existing technology. We want to introduce brand new, ways of doing things. And then how do we bring this into the marketplace, right? With that radical solution. So some of our Google X projects that we've done over the last few years that have now been announced publicly are some of these, right? Google X, Google Fiber, which is, what would you do if you have the world's fastest internet? And this was launched 5 years ago, and putting in 1 gigabyte, 1 GB connections into homes, private homes. Asking consumers, what would you do if you don't have to wait for things to buffer, to load, right? What would you do with that technology or schools? On the bottom left there, the self-driving car. More than 1 million people die every year globally due to car accidents. More than 1 million people die every year due to car accidents. And that's just die, right? And then you got, I think, something like 15 million, get injured. So you see a lot of, and most of this, more than 90% are caused by human error. Right? Human making mistakes, right? Maybe a human fell asleep, maybe they're texting, maybe they're on the phone, or maybe they're just slow to react, right? So a lot of traffic accidents are caused by human error. What if we could develop technology that can help reduce the number of deaths? I mean, that's a pretty good problem to solve. And so they come out with the self-driving car initiative, which has now, if you go to California, you see a lot of self-driving cars around. And many of them now are autonomous, so they don't even have a steering wheel, which is quite scary sometimes, but the technology is there. And it allows it doesn't just save lives, right? It allows people that are blind, people that are physically disabled to be able to access and use vehicles. Project Loon, which is the high-powered balloons that we launch into the Earth's stratosphere. So above where planes fly, we put these balloons in the sky, and they can beam Wi-Fi signals down to the area below them. And so we launched this in Christchurch in New Zealand when they had the earthquake. Right after that, the earthquake, usually, all your communications towers are wiped out and everyone's trying to get online and connect and so forth. So, we're able to provide Wi-Fi, to areas after they've been wiped out. And then Project Wing, on the bottom right there, which is using drones to provide delivery to places that are not easily accessible by car. So some of these are, when they were launched, there was it was an experiment. They were all experiments. There was no hope of monetizing, making money from any of this stuff. And today, I don't think we've monetized any of these things. So these were all experiments. We have a team within that also called the Life Sciences Division. And some of these projects, again, looking at how do we use technology to support and aid medical-related, aging-related diseases, right? Like Parkinson's and diabetics. And so we see sort of that idea of 10x thinking. How do you aim? How do you create a culture of problem solving and teaching them to aim, for the moon or for the stars, and really, really improve, tremendously, and not just, have that 10-20% increment. I wanna end off with one final video. Talking about one of my favorite quotes by Einstein, and this is a Albert Einstein quote. And apologies, it keeps getting cut off. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Right? Many of you are educators in this room, and hopefully you're still not teaching the same way that you were taught when you were going through school. Look at new ways of solving problems. Look at new ways of introducing ideas as well. Do we have time for one more video? Okay. people like video, so I wanna show this. So this is the evolution of Google and some of the technology that we're seeing over the last 5 to, I guess, over the last 18 years. So Google is 18 years old as a company this year.
When we were trying to name Google, we actually went through thousands of names.
The name of the company has now become its own verb in the dictionary.
Let's Google it.
You can Google it.
Work the Google on the internet machine.
6 simple letters on a plain white page.
Being able to do searches in any language about any country.
When you're putting in a question, they'd finish your question for you.
We have been working on organizing the world's information.
Our goal is to digitize all the books.
Today, Google announced Gmail. Email for everyone, for free.
Google is mapping the entire world to make it more accessible to people everywhere.
Google is jumping into the mobile market.
Android was built as an open platform for everyone to use and build on. This is Chrome. It's a faster, safer browser for the open web.
Google is unveiling what they call the knowledge graph.
We needed to understand the world the way you and I do, as objects and relationships between objects.
Today, Google got another useful feature with Google Now.
We are providing you with answers before you've even asked for them.
One of my favorite cards is the one that shows traffic data for your commute to and from work.
Think about how far Google has evolved from the 10 blue links.
We asked ourselves, how can we assist you right when you need it?
Okay, Google, call the Walker Arts Center.
It's not just desktops, phones, and laptops anymore.
오케이, 구글. 유진이한테 5분 늦는다고 문자 보내줘.
It's watches with displays, car consoles with displays.
Okay, Google. Let's go to the aquarium.
How can we help you get things done in as few steps as possible?
Okay, Google.
Okay, Google. Show me my photos of Lucas with the pumpkin.
But we have to remember, we have a long way to go. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
So we have a long way to go, but we can can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I always say, there are solutions even to the hardest problems. I showed the video of the Rubik's Cube earlier, and if you give up, you cannot. There are always ways to solve some of the most challenging problems in the world. With that, thank you very much.
谢谢 Mr. Suan Yeo 为我们带来相当精彩的分享。接下来我们即将进行焦点座谈，请各位稍后我们的工作人员协助。好，最后我们即将进行国际教育创新与未来突破的焦点座谈。首先，让我们欢迎我们的主持人路怡珍主播，以及我们的与谈人 Mr. Kenn Ross、Mr. Federico Musto 以及 Mr. Suan Yeo， 请3位一同上台与我们面对面进行座谈。
嗨，大家还好吗？快接近午餐的时间了，谢谢大家跟着我一起坚持到现在，然后聆听3位在台上非常非常丰富经验，然后也带来业界非常非常多新颖的想法，在跨域、在智慧校园、在如何更好的学习这件事情上面都有更多经验的3位讲者。那么现在接下来的这个 session 呢，就是由我来提出2个关键的问题，想请教台上所有的人的想法。那么接下来如果您有问题，也请您把握这个环节的机会，跟着台上的大师还有国际级论坛的大师一起来交流。So right now I would like to take this session to raise 2 questions for each candidate on the each panelist on the stage, and then we will have an open floor so people can raise questions, or maybe later on after the session we can have more opportunity to mingle with Taiwanese people or all the attendants. 好，第一个我的问题呢，我们从跨域这件事情开始讲起。crossover 这件事情在最近掀起了翻天覆地的讨论，每一个产业呢都希望可以结合不同的学习、不同的训练，然后达到更多的效能。所以我们在跨域创新论坛上面，第一个跨域要怎么跨得更好，就是我会想要问的问题。So first question I would like to raise is we talk about crossover, we talk about multi-principle. And for example, if we take NASA and Google, for example, they start this Singularity University that acquire most brilliant and smartest students around the globe, and they train them to grow up exponentially. And one of the key points is that really emphasize upon that you're not limited to any specific role, and you should try as bold as possible to go out to explore and cross over with different talents and different educators and different industry. And in mainland China, we also have this concept, Internet Plus, right? So any kind of vehicle plus internet become Uber, become Yidao, become a lot of different things. So crossover right now, this age is really, really important, especially in the education field. So first question I would like to 请教 Mr. Kenn Ross. So what do you think about crossover and multidiscipline in higher education? Does it still play such an important role? Is it going to be even more important in the future? What's your take?
就像我讲中文可以吗？
All right.
还是 I can speak English too. It's okay.
Yes, of course.
Life is multidisciplinary. 人生就是跨学科的。If you are, I don't know, I was using an example earlier. If you are a seminal biologist, if you are doing seminal work in the field of biology, you just don't need to know about and interact with biology. You're going to be dealing with government. You're probably going to be dealing with business. Social science issues come into play. So whatever people do in life, it's true. It's 跨学科的, right? It's multidisciplinary. It's just a fact. We all know this. Now, a lot of students, when they're younger, not everybody realizes this nowadays, right? And it is a little bit scary because most of our traditional institutions of higher learning around the world still are structured in departments, right? Still teach in very siloed majors or concentrations in a very non-multidisciplinary way, right? But that is changing. Right? And, you heard me speak a little bit earlier. I think, Suan Yeo, also you mentioned a lot of what you were saying, blends into this, that there are sort of changes afoot. The idea of having a broad education, what in the United States we talk about the liberal arts and sciences, right? That's actually nothing new. And even 100 years ago in university education, at least in the United States, people said, yes, it's okay to have an area upon which you can focus for your studies, but you also need to know maybe a little bit about this and maybe a little bit about that and a little bit about other things as well to be a much more almost complete person, but also to help you do whatever you specialize in, right? So the concept in itself is actually not that new. It's the weird thing, right? In our modern era, it becomes even more important than ever, right? But like I said, unfortunately, a lot of our traditional institutions, I believe, are not moving as quickly enough in this direction. But there is movement. Certainly, Minerva is one way. I think a lot of what's happening in the maker movement. There's a institution in the U.S. Well, you guys know this at Google very well, Alt School, right? Also based in San Francisco. Folks, Max and folks came out of Google actually, doing things quite differently. It's very relevant. I'd say it's been relevant for some time, but it's probably even more relevant nowadays to have that multidisciplinary approach, to have that crossover approach, to be able to learn certain skills and abilities, as I talked about earlier, and then to practice applying them across multiple disciplines. Even if maybe later in life, whatever you do, maybe you don't end up practicing or applying them in all those disciplines maybe for the rest of your life. But that process of knowing how to do so is very, very valuable. So we don't have enough of it. And those of you out there, listen, we're all mainly adults here. I don't see too many students. 没有学生了哈，没有哈。So, but we're all students. You know, 没有小朋友应该这样说。我也小朋友，永远小朋友。But I think that we need, you know, 你我都需要 like require, you know, demand that our structured institutions of higher learning or of secondary learning, institutions where you work, institutions where you lead, require them to change, right? For the benefit of younger people now and everybody going forward, for the benefit of all of us.
Thank you. It's interesting that Mr. Kenn Ross mentioned that we're not having enough of it. We're not having enough 跨领域的学习，然后跨学科的学习。在很久很久以前，可能100多年前，甚至在古希腊的时代，这件事情就是一直存在着的。但到现在，这件事情却变得比以往更加的重要。
很奇怪，就是从19世纪开始，就德国模式的这种专业性的，就是研究性大学的，就崛起了。就发现 that's something, and that's what we actually have nowadays, but 完全没有跟上时代。
Do you agree with him, Mr. Federico Musto?
Well, let me say another way. I'm an engineer. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a professor. So I don't know exactly the secret ingredient to help the student to learn more. But I was at MIT, so I'm a really traditional student. I spent a lot of time on my labs working with the computer. I would say that definitely Arduino is an interesting proof of concept on what will happen when you're able to take two different words and combine together. Arduino is an electronic, definitely is a community built from engineer, but the majority of the innovation comes from the heart, from the artistic part. So it is really two completely different words that was able to combine and make something completely new, amazing. It's also true that at some level you must have some knowledge, some ability that come from a very hard work, studying textbook and make calculation and stuff like that. What does mean that definitely we should be able to find a better way to teach that. I mean, the regular classroom or the panel that sometimes happen in the regular university, that's the best way to learn. Well, it was the good way until now. If we see what happened in university in Finland, for example, that in North Europe is one of the best. Well, they say that the best way to teach is to put the student outside the classroom. Looks like they are doing a pretty good job, because if we check the rate, I mean, they produce really good.
You mean the ranking of the university?
Correct. I mean, so again, I'm not a professor. I'm just a very small engineer that's trying to catch the best part of the community and empower this community. But yes, agree. Today we need some new way to teach. We need some new way to merge the best from a different world. And interesting that the artistic part of this, that is not technology, will help a lot. Again, I'm saying sometimes it's like the beauty. You don't know how to build it, but when you see it, you recognize it and you love it. And again, Arduino is an interesting proof of concept how should happen when you are able to merge two different words together.
Right. Since you're representing Arduino in this panel, I would like to ask you, do you think the spirit of the maker is actually an education movement? It's actually a new way to engage students, to teach students, and to forge a different set of thinking strategy, the spirit of maker itself. And do you think crossover and multidisciplinary, like Mr. Kenn Ross just mentioned, is also important in the maker field?
Well, yes, I will say definitely yes. And it was interesting, a couple of slides that you see that problem solving was one of the key, let's say, features that the company are looking for. So the answer is, I mean, Arduino or any other platform that allow us to think and maybe to use some component to fix problem. That will help us to work in this direction. So The answer is definitely yes.
Thank you so much. What about Mr. Suan Yeo? Do you, in terms of the Google Cloud solution, I watched your presentation for a little bit. Crossover important, more important than ever?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. I think, Kenn mentioned, what he's doing with his schools and all schools. And more schools are creating environments where they are encouraging students to collaborate, to think outside the box, almost becoming like a workplace. It's not a traditional school. And I think the opportunity as educators is for us to embrace that, because that's the world that we're heading in. I'll give you an example, right? If my boss at Google asks me a question, right, and I don't know the answer, right? I can tell him I don't know the answer, but I'll find out and I'll get back to you, right? And then what do? I'll go and Google it, right? I'll go talk to somebody about it, right? But those critical skills of, again, knowing where to find the answer, collaborating with peers, right? Those are critical life skills that we see, that we use in the workplace. And then I'll come back to my boss when I finish and getting the answer and show him the data. I think education, again, one of the challenges of traditional education is we expect students to know the answer. We expect them to know the facts. Right? All your standardized tests and exams, we test every student the same way. Right? All of us know that students learn in different ways. Right? Some are more visual, some are more tactile, they like to use their hands. Some are more collaborative, some like to work alone. So there's so many different ways that students learn. But yet we continue to test them the same way. Right? You sit for this test for 2 hours, you cannot talk to anybody, you cannot look up anything. And that doesn't happen in real life, right? Like if somebody's testing me at Google, internally, somebody asking me a question, I can go and Google it. I can go and talk to somebody about it. So I think there's I don't want to say it's fundamental shift, but it's starting to blur. And it needs to blur, because if we keep testing people based on facts and what they need to know and what they need to memorize, we're not preparing them for their future. Because the future is not about facts. The future is not about memorizing things. The future is about knowing where to go look for things.
I cannot agree more.
I was going to say that's why we have, in 4 years at our university, we don't have a single test. That traditional style test.
Wait, 40 years? Is that?
4 年, 4 years.
Oh, 4年当中没有一次考试。哦，没有一次考试。
We have other ways of assessing people, but it's more like the way it happens in real life.
It's very interesting. Mr. Suan Yeo 告诉我们说，其实他认为，其实，在传统学校里面所考试学生、甄试学生的这个方法，跟现实生活是有很大的脱节的。在现实生活中，不可能解决问题的时候，是坐在那边2个小时，然后完成你的考试，这跟现实生活完全没有关系。因此，我们需要更大、更丰富的变革。那么 ，which lead on to my second question，在商业跟在现代的这个经济领域 ，we talk about 工业4.0 ，we talk about the next industrial revolution, we talk about industry 4.0。它中间的这个概念呢，是说接下来AI 人工智慧 intellectual intelligence 或者是机器人手臂，它会取代旧有的人力human force 的生活，它会取代原来的人类的生产力。那下一阶段的这个世代，作为一个学生怎么学习自己，作为未来的工作者需要什么样的竞争力，而且这些东西要怎么在教育环境里面准备得更好，那么这是我接下来的问题。So we talk about industry 4.0 in business sector. We also talk about talent. How do we prepare our talent, our student now, our future workers to adapt even more better into the new world when we think about AI, when we talk about robots going to replace human? Is there any new way that we can train our student? And as a student myself or yourself, how can we prepare more to adapt the future trends?
我就提出一个对于你刚刚用出的一个小反对，就也不是工业4.0，早就已经走出这个工业
100.0了，
也不是，就不用说工业，就说信息时代，早就已经进入这个信息时代。而且我觉得我们已经是具备这些能够就是很 relevantly 培育，就是说这边的现在的年轻人呢或什么的，就是为了应对这个现在和未来。We already have these. There's a lot that we actually have already nowadays, right? That can help us inform how we should be educating these folks. And again, I think I'm probably most informed about what we're doing. And it's funny because we are a tertiary institution. So this is 大学部教育, right? At least at Minerva, right? It's undergraduate university education. And some people say to me, well, shouldn't students be learning to apply these abilities and skills even earlier? To which I say yes. Right? The reason why we've decided to attack and solve the problem at the university level is because traditional universities have been probably the slowest, right? So in other words, I gave to make this change, I gave the example of alt school before, right? And there are other schools like this, the maker movement. There are a lot of schools that are doing things at the K through 12, at the primary or secondary level, but not as much as the tertiary level, which is why we actually wanted to sort of attack the tertiary level. That's just a bit of FYI information there. But if you do not want to be, replaced by a robot, right? Or technology, right? Or just if you want to even, that's very 那个很被动。我们就讲的主动一点。Let's go be more not passive. Let's be more active and think. How are the young minds of now, right? Who will lead the world, and be us in the future, 23 years in the future, right? How are these people, going to be moving humanity forward, right? That's the way sort of we look at it. And what are, again, those core, what do you basically have to have regardless of which way you're going to choose to move humanity forward? Right? And again, I think it's those, everybody has a little bit different of a, 不同的人有不同的系统，不同的架构。你看这个I guess, where did you get yours on your slide? Where was that from? Economist. So economist group, right? And we've seen the World Economic Forum one. I've seen ones from the World Bank, right? So in Minerva, we've sort of integrated a lot of these, and we have our own sort of system, basically what it is, or structure, right? These meta skills, and then there are all these sort of subcognitive processes below these meta skills, right? Again, the things that you and I use on a daily basis, and regardless of whose list you're looking at, 不管你看哪个系统，都有一些共同点, right? 批判性思维, right? Critical thinking, right? Creative problem solving, or sometimes I group problem solving and creativity into one sometimes, but you could split them out, right? Collaboration and communication. Every single list out there, right? Every single person who's, we could say maybe expert on this matter, right? Those 4 things or 5 things are always on everybody's list, right? And again, cognitive science shows that these things are innate abilities that can all be brought out in all of us. Right? Now, some people may be inherently more intelligent than others, right? And maybe get things a little quicker. I understand that, right? But we can all learn to apply these things multidisciplinarily. That's a long word. Jeez, it's a long word. We can all learn these things, right? They can be taught. They should be taught. But to do so, you have to step back and rethink whatever your university or your secondary school system is, right? For those people that sometimes I interact with, and we talk about what we're doing at a tertiary level, at a university level, and they say, I want to do this at a secondary level, you can, right? And we hope that folks like us, other folks that are doing different things in education, will give a sort of a shining example that the rest of everyone else can follow. We need more of it.
So please answer briefly and quickly.
Yeah.
Google.
I think encouraging students to ask questions, constantly. I think that's really important. There are a lot of statistics and reports that you read about how schools are killing creativity. And I think I saw recently the average 4-year-old Average 4-year-old will ask about 400 questions a day. 400 questions a day, right? And then, when you get older and older, they stop asking questions. Why do they stop asking questions? Is it because they know everything? Obviously, clearly not. But is it because the formal education system, discourages them from asking questions? And it's true. Those of you who are teachers, every time, in your class, if you ask the question and you ask people to volunteer their answer, very few people will put their hand up. But if you go to a preschool or kindergarten, you ask questions, everyone's like, dying because they have so many things to say. So why is it as we go through education, formal education, we almost kill the creativity and the inquisitivity, from kids, and they stop asking questions. So I think encouraging that culture of asking questions and which will result in problem solving and working together as well.
学习问更多的问题，然后跟你身边的人一起合作，然后学会更批判性的思考，绝对是准备未来的方式。
Well, maybe one of the answers is because we're getting old, and sometimes that doesn't help too much. But I just want to. I remember an interesting program that has been developed in UK. With the goal to help the elementary school student to face with the problem solving with electronics. The program that I'm talking about is the BBC Micro. Is a very little a small electronic board that has been sponsored by the UK government, and the BBC was basically the company behind this project. They built 5 million, if I remember correctly, of this very little board, and they used this product to teach how to program to the elementary school student. Has been a very, very successful product, and it was probably one of the answers that practical answer, of course, from the government, in this case from UK, to help the young generation to see a new way to learn, in this case, electronics and programming language, and to basically to be able to solve problem, very, very, very easy problem, but that was something that was help them to scale to the next level. BBC Micro, I think you can Google it.
BBC Micro,
and you will find it. It's pretty interesting.
Google it and you will find it out. 好，我想请问一下，我们还有时间让台下的观众朋友如果有问题提问吗？还是我们必须在这里结束了？
See, this is just like asking questions, right?
This is just like asking. I'm asking a direct question. Do we have time?
如果你们都是几岁的孩子们，的问题一大堆的。
好，这边我们 at least take one question here. Okay, the gentleman here over here. 没有问题。
请教一个问题，就是说，在这个国际的一个学习的一个环境里面，跨领域之外，有没有包含到跨文化的一个综合性的一个教育，让这个学习的一个过程里面，在不管是沟通、思考各方面解决问题的能力会更好？因为大部分都喜欢谈到这个跨文化跨领域的部分里面，其实有一个很大的一个元素，就是说因为现在已经国际化，教育的一个已经拉平了，那很多的一个国际的一个学生都有流动性，那很多像芬兰刚刚有提到，其实他们也有很多的外来的一个新的一个族群在他们的国家里面，那这个部分的话，目前在这个遇到有哪些地方，像东南亚也有很多的国家，也有很多的族群，那有没有这样的一个遇到什么样的一个挑战？谢谢。
I want to echo on this too. 就是sometimes it's very hard to naturally know how to interact with foreigners because we came from different backgrounds, different educational systems, share different core value and cultural value. Is it an educational emphasizing point that you want to work on?
Okay, I'll talk a bit about this because it is something that we do in a very structured way, and it's sort of part of the global immersion. This global experience is part of the whole general Minerva experience, 4 years. And yes, you can. I mean, we've actually built a system and a structure that will, maybe I use the words, sort of force our students, right, to engage with communities. Right?
强迫他们。
用强迫这个词 ，yeah， 我只能想到强迫这个词，有点这个我们这个体制，我们这种系统就会自然而然让他们，不要说强迫，让他们就说走出去 ，right? Seriously, for example, because we are looking for, we're just accepting people from all over the world with any quotas. The types of students you have, it's just people from everywhere. 换句话来说，在 Minerva 我们没有一个主流的、主要的民族国籍啊。你想想看，这个据我知道，在大学这个级别里面，我可能没有这种，或者很少，就没有另外一所大学就说是没有主要的国籍背景的，就是文化背景的，就是说民族背景的，对吧？台湾大学大部分的学生就是台湾人，right？不管你所谓的国际生占5%、10%、20%啊，那么美国大学也都是这样子，大部分就是美国人，就是长得像我这样啊。So， 但是在 Minerva 你没有一个主流的啊，没有人占多数啊，连美国人也不占多数啊。自然而然的美国人大概我们也不限制美国人，但是大概只有10%几啊左右，20%左右，不一样的。So that's the first thing that you can do is you make sure that the 学生群, like the community within the school, is completely, 说很杂, right? In a good way. The next thing what you can do is, 当你这样周游列国的时候, right? You can integrate, which is what we do, you can integrate local facilities and local resources, local relationships, local organizations into the curriculum, regardless of what specific 专业 or area of study you actually do. This is exactly what we do, right? Such that if you are a student that is studying something called global government, right? Which is sort of maybe our version of political science in a more relevant way, right? Studying global government, we curate experiences with governments around the world, right? So think about, I can't think of any other institution where if you're studying government, you can interact oftentimes at a deep level. You're doing location-based assignments, doing experiential project-based learning with local governments in the United States, in Argentina, in Korea, in India, right? In Germany, the UK. Different government structures, right? Different challenges, some similar challenges, 总会有一些共同的问题, right? But that sort of type of experience is something you can bring in to the curriculum, is something that very much we do. So those are two examples of how you can actually do this. You really have to think deeply about how you're going to do it, though. And it does take a lot of work to set up, but it's quite doable. It's more challenging at a secondary level, sometimes when you're, yeah, 因为有人就说13岁的孩子们不能这样子一个人周游列国，哪怕是家長跟隨呢也不好。Maybe, I don't know. But again, at the tertiary level, at the undergraduate level, it's certainly doable.
所以回答这位先生的问题，Kenn Ross 的意思是说呢，其实他们是非常非常有意识的在设计一个跨文化的教育的沟通的理念，它确保在他的学校体制里面，不只是这个国际的占比，而是没有一个单一显著的组成的族群，然后让这样子的环境自然而然的让学生可以这个拥抱就是跨文化的环境。But I'm very curious about Google for Education as a cloud solution. Does it really emphasize the difference of culture, or you try to make it go away?
I think if you look at technology as a whole, there's no language to technology, and I'll give again an example. If you play games, video games, or you've seen a child play video games, the first time they will fail, and then what do? They'll try again, right? And then they'll fail and they'll try again, and they keep trying until they pass, right? If you walk into the exhibition hall again, right? Everything's about virtual reality. Everything's about games. These things have no language. It doesn't matter whether you speak English or, does Minecraft have a language? Does Pokemon have a language? All of the new technologies are coming on, all of these mobile applications and learning technologies, doesn't matter, it's going to be regardless of culture and language. It's going to be cross barrier. So, at Google, we talk a lot about the web being the future, the internet being the future. And, anyone that can connect to the internet will have access to information. And so it doesn't matter whether, you're here in Taiwan or I'm in Australia or Federico's in Italy or Kenn's in New York. We can all use technology to connect. We don't need to be in the same place. We can all get on a video conference and share information and share ideas that we don't need to be physically together anymore. So I think technology already today allows for learning and sharing across borders, across languages, across cultures.
我觉得很有趣，因为我听到了2个截然不同的观点跟出发的角度。Kenn Ross 希望尽可能的加强这个文化上面的复杂性跟多元程度，认为这样子对学生的培育是非常重要的。但是从科技平台的角度来说，因为科技的发展，然后让语言的隔阂、文化的隔阂几乎可以是零壁垒的互相的沟通，就像是每一个人在玩宝可梦一样，他不管你的出身来自的文化是什么，都可以 adapt 在这个游戏上，在这个领域里面。那这个也是 Google 它作为一个科技公司，它希望可以达成的目标 ，which I found really interesting because it's a totally different aspect and two.
但其实我觉得不矛盾的，也不矛盾 ，seriously 不矛盾。这些东西毕竟，哪怕你不想要它同时存在，它就是同时存在 ，right? So I think it's
mutually exclusive. For Mr. Gusel, sorry, we only have about 1 minute. In maker education, do you emphasize upon cultural differences?
Well, I fully agree. I mean, there is some technology now that allow us to make video conference and stuff like that. I hate video conference. I like to talk with the people face to face. I like to sort of touch them in the way, of course, to in the feelings, right? That is, well, that's true. I come from a Montessori school. Can you believe that? I come from a Montessori school, and basically Montessori school say you can do what you want. You stay in the class and you play. Well, it was very hard to pass the exam, mathematics and stuff, but I enjoy a lot. I was doing whatever I was happy to do. Take a nap or just play with a cooking lesson. So again, talking about my personal experience, I was studying in US. I spent a lot of time in Taiwan. I work in Europe. I work in China. So that's true. It's very interesting what I learned today about this new way to build the class around the world, so allow the student to travel. I think that is a key point. The beauty to be here today and talk with you guys and learn a lot of new things, project, idea, and then tomorrow to be another place. Of course, is very, very stressful in the way that we travel too much, but does allow us to learn a lot of things. Can we do that by video conference? I don't know. I still like to have a pizza and enjoy the pizza together. And this is a very old school. I fully agree. But we are humans. Well, I don't know if Google at some point will be able to put a chip inside ourselves. I still love to make a pizza with my friends and, make noodles. I love noodles. I know dumplings, especially Chinese one. I know a couple of restaurants here is good. So anyway, I'm saying that, yes, the future's, and we need to find a new way to improve the way to teach. But we're still human body, and we still love to stay together and interact in the very old traditional way. That's my personal experience. I don't know if it's answered. I just like to share with you my pizza way.
谢谢这位先生提的一个我个人认为非常好的问题，或许可以做一个很快的总结。可能将来的社会，包括教育的领域，都会面临更多元的来自于文化和跨领域的挑战。但是当我们想要有一个更零壁垒的零沟通障碍的科技工具的时候，像是在 Maker， 像是在科技领域，还是有这样子的平台，然后这样子的工具可以让我们使用。所以不互相矛盾，更可以说是相辅相成。谢谢大家今天听到这边已经快中午的时间了，相信大家肚子也有点饿了，需要稍微休息一下下。但是在外面的展场区有非常多精彩的这个展位，然后有很多的业者带来他们最新的技术啊、最新的游戏等等，要跟大家一起分享。也谢谢台上3位的讲者花时间跟我们一起做这个 panel。Thank you so much, Mr. Musto. Thank you so much, Mr. Suan Yeo, and thank you so much, Mr. Kenn Ross.
感谢3位与谈人与我们今天带来如此精彩的分享。今天上午的论坛就此告一段落，十分感谢各位来宾的参与。几件事情提醒各位来宾，明天9月9号亚太智慧校园研讨会将于上午9点于第5会议室举行，欢迎大家参加。若您有租借翻译设备的贵宾，请您至服务台取回您的证件并归还。如果您需要登记公务人员或教师研习时数，也请您至服务台办理。最后提醒各位来宾，您手上有一张问卷调查表，请各位填写完毕之后缴回我们的服务台。最后在本馆2楼 H 区同时举办国际校园展览，欢迎各位前往体验。今天谢谢大家的参与，谢谢大家。